Today is Monday, November 21st, and you should be reading Ezra chapter 1 and 2, also John chapter 21. I want to today focus on our John passage. As we finish out the book of John, we see a cool thing happen here as God reinstates one of his disciples. And I want to, at the end of our discussion, the time today together, to give you a challenge of doing exactly what Peter experienced. And so here in this chapter, we see that it's after Jesus has resurrected from the dead, and his people, his disciples, some of them just are like, man, we're gonna go fishing. They fish all night and they don't catch anything, and they see a campfire on the edge of the shore, and some guy is shouting out to them, asking them if they've caught any fish, and they're like, no, and so he tells them to cast their nets on the other side. Well, they had heard that before. They remember that, oh, we've heard this before, and actually I believe it's John who says, hey, this is the Lord. And so Peter is like super excited because he wants to go see Jesus. He's excited. But there's a cool analogy or a parallel that goes along here with two fires. And we've talked about this before. Adam has talked about it in his sermons about this Greek word anthrokia. There is another fire, a campfire, a charcoal fire that happens in John chapter 18, just a few chapters ago that we read. And this fire was a fire that Peter and other people were outside warming their hands, warming up by the fire as Jesus was in his trial. And we know that Peter at that moment, he denies Jesus 3 times. And he totally denies that he knows the Lord. And what a terrible moment that is for Peter. It could have ruined him. It could have made him take a path of despair and to leave the mission. It could have been a moment where Peter and his ministry, before it really even got off the ground, that it could have been destroyed. But now here is another charcoal fire that Jesus is there, and Peter comes running to Jesus. He's excited to see him. He hasn't seen him very much since that trial, that night that Jesus was put on trial before his crucifixion. And he comes to him, and he has a conversation with Jesus, which Jesus brings up, and a few times, 3 times actually, Jesus asks Peter, do you love me? Well, Peter is like, of course you know I love you, Lord. And it gets to the 3rd time, and Peter is like, you know all things, Lord. You know that I love you. And Jesus, in that moment, each time he is saying, feed my lambs, feed my sheep, feed my sheep. And so he is giving him the keys and saying, here, I forgive you. Go and do what I've taught you to do, to make disciples, to go and share my truth and my gospel that I have came to restore people unto myself. And Peter is restored, and he has a wonderful time there with Jesus. Have you ever had a moment where you feel like, wow, I have denied Jesus, I have betrayed him in whatever way? Probably, more than likely, you have, in whatever way it was. And maybe in that moment you were so ashamed of yourself, and it could be a moment that is a moment that leads you on a different journey. Here with Peter, I believe it did take him on a journey of more pursuance of who God is and to be more loyal to him, because he was reminded that God is a God of restoration. He never changes. He restores us when we come running back to him. So maybe more than likely you have had one of those moments like Peter, and you come to him and you ask for forgiveness. And God, with arms wide open, he restores you and reminds you of his truth, that he wants to forgive. He sent his son Jesus to pay for your sin, including that sin when you denied him. And then you allow that to empower you to move forward, to share your testimony of how God has reinstated you. He has restored you to a relationship with himself. How beautiful, how wonderful our great God is, and that his promises are always true. He always promises to forgive us. And then he leaves us with reminding us that he never leaves us or forsakes us. So as he reinstates us, he restores us to himself. He then reminds us, I'm not going to leave you. I'm going to be right there with you. And so as you go out today, tomorrow, the next day, be reminded that you are restored. You keep your eyes on the truth. Keep your eyes on God as your one who has paid for you, that has reinstated you, and so that you can be a light for his kingdom to the people around you. Church, until we see you again, you are sent.